Hi again. In this posting, we'll do setup review of the endpoints, vPCs, and the service graph that will properly set up our demo. As an overview here, I have a bit of a busy diagram, but we have basically two ACI pods, pod 2 and pod 3, and we have a 9300 fully populated chassis in each. You can see them here in a cluster as unit 1-123 and unit 2 for a designator for the chassis, also followed by 1, 2, and 3 blades in those. To demonstrate our capability of localizing traffic, we have attached a single ESXi host into a leaf in each pod. And we have host 1 and 3 with these IPs. They're going to be talking to through a contract and being directed to a firewall via PBR service graph into its local firewall. And the same in the pod 3, two hosts through a contract, and they're supposed to be using their own firewall units designated and attached with a VPC into their own pod. As part of the FXOS chassis manager GUI here, I'm just giving you a screen capture here that we have 3 FTD blades in chassis 1 here. First one is a master and 2 others are slaves. You can see the 2 port channels, 1 CCL, 1 data. The chassis H in pod 3 has just 3 slaves attached in there. Looking further into the port channel configuration on the chassis, we simply have a port channel 10 on the 9300 with 4 ports dual attached into the leafs, and also the CCL with 2 ports, one going into each leaf. So finally, looking at the ACI configuration itself, the CCL vPCs defined on APIC here with these 2 leafs, that VPC for chassis G here is attached into a CCL EPG as a static port. The same goes for the H chassis. It has a separate VPC with leafs 10 and 11, and it's also attached as an additional item into the CCL EPG. For the data plane of the whole cluster here, what we have is we have individual VPCs, as we mentioned, and we have those defined, and they are actually part of the layer 4 through 7 device here. So they are added in there as a first device into the service graph. And also H chassis here with 2 different leaves is added as a second device in a layer 4 through 7. So as we look at ACI endpoints and FTD service graph here, here's a view of our CCL EPG. These are the 2 VPCs that we mentioned earlier. They have to be access and untagged type because the CCL cannot have a VLAN tagging associated to it. And here we're assigning the same VLAN to those static maps. On the left here, we have a layer 4 through 7 device, and there, this device being used as part of the PBR service graph, you can see that we lay out 2 different devices that will be used for that PBR service graph, and we have those laid out, and you can see here that they belong to 2 different pods, pod 2 and pod 3. They're both then added as cluster interfaces here for the consumer side. Going a little further into endpoints learned in pod 2 and pod 3, we have here an EPG outside and operational tab showing us what APIC has learned inside that EPG. And we can see here the 2 IPs that we have as Linux hosts attached into them. Here you can see that one is actually learned in pod 2 and the other one in pod 3. The same is for this inside 1 EPG. We have the 2 IPs and also 2 hosts that they're on. Those are the 2 attached in each pod, designated here pod 2 and pod 3. The contract itself between this inside one and outside EPGs is in one to out. It has a firewall attached to it. It is a policy-based routing type, so that is set to true. Going further, this just shows you it's a one arm with consumer and provider connectors being in the same bridge domain. And it's basically using the same interface defined in layer 4 through 7 device. So that is simply an overview. Next, we're going to go into actual demo now that you know what the environment looks like. Thank you for watching.